Hey, this is Suzanne Mosley with Usborne Books and More. You can find me on Facebook at Suzanne Shares Usborne Books. You can also find me on YouTube at the same spot. So today I wanted to highlight two newer books. These are both newer. They both came out in 2016 about coding. And this would be computer coding. Not like medical coding or zip codes or alphabetizing your pantry into a code by codes. So anyway, these are fabulous, and I get a lot of questions about how these two particular books differ, and so I wanted to explain that. We have both of them, and they have been a hit. So first I want to start just with the Lift the Flap, Computers and Coding. This is in our Lift the Flap series. So it has a lot of basic nonfiction information about computers. What's a computer? What is coding? How does it work? Like what's inside your computer? Whoops, dropping it. Giving instructions. And there are little flaps that answer these little questions. So this is very much a nonfiction, interactive book for an individual, for a child. So that is our Lift the Flap, Computer and Coding. Now, our coding for beginners using Scratch is something totally different. I've learned all this because my middle son has this and he loves it. So I knew absolutely nothing about computer programming before our family had this book. And again, I've learned a lot. So Scratch is a computer language that MIT developed for children to teach them just a computer language to teach them how to begin using coding. So a lot of STEM schools use Scratch within the classroom to teach children how to code, how to computer code. Actually, I had this book a couple of months ago at a booth that I did, and a middle school teacher, he was a gentleman, he came up and he grabbed the book immediately and he was like, I've got to look at this. And so I was just asking him about it, and he said, we actually use Scratch in my 7th grade class. This is something that I teach with my children. So he was really excited about the book. Because he uses it in his school. So that's why MIT designed it. So Scratch is a computer language, and the way this book is designed, it is a coding book for beginners specifically using Scratch. So the book, as it starts out, it gives some basic instructions, basic tasks for your child, and then they come up with various things. Like one of the first things that they do is they make what in Scratch is called a sprite, which is like a little person. And this is how to make the sprites dance. This is dancing sprites. So it gives your child step-by-step instructions. They're numbered. They have to follow the instructions to make it work. And again, it gets progressively harder. So this is guess the number. So this creates a game where the player has to guess the number. This is a race car game that your child will learn how to build with this. And again, it gets harder as it goes, and then at the end, just some useful stuff on all the coding about sound, all the coding about sensing, gives them an overview of that, pen, operators, and then there's a glossary at the back. So this is more practical. Your child takes this book, has a computer, and uses Scratch to build things. This one is more informative. This is nonfiction. Of course, this incorporates nonfiction because there's facts here, but they're actually doing something. This one is more, they're reading the information, soaking it in, and just learning about computers and coding. This one, on the other hand, they're actually doing it. So my son, he's made games, he's built sprites, he is learning how to use Scratch through this program. And so once he has worked through the whole book, he is going to be very, very familiar with Scratch, and then he will be able to create his own games, sprites, just unique things with Scratch because he's learned how to master, in a sense, mastered using Scratch. And then now he can take it a step further once he's finished with this book and kind of create his own. He won't need the step-by-step instructions anymore. So I love that. So this is for beginners. It teaches them the basics of Scratch in a very methodical way. And then once they're finished with it, in theory, they will be able to use Scratch to build and create whatever they want. And just as a parent, I want, just with our times changing, I want my kids to be able to use computers in a healthy way. I read an article recently about why it's so important for our kids to know how to do computer programming, because that's kind of how the way the world is going. So once I read that article, I'd been putting off getting this book because we don't do a ton of electronics in our home, but after I read that article, I was like, you know what, that's true. I want my boys to know how to be familiar with computer programming, because even if they're an accountant, there's probably going to be some realm of computer programming that they need to be savvy with as they get older. So I'm excited about them having this and using it and learning how to use to do Scratch. And another thing that I love as a parent is that these instructions, they are methodical. They have to follow them in order. There's step 1, step 2, step 3. And if they do not do it, whatever the task is, if it's a game or if they're creating a character, a sprite, and he's supposed to dance or play music, if they don't follow the instructions, it does not work. So there have been multiple times where my son has been using this book. He calls me, Mom, he's panicking, Mom, it's not working. And I ask him, have you followed the instructions? And he's like, yes. Well, then inevitably we go through it again. We go step by step, and he skipped a step. So I love that he is learning the importance of reading the information and following instructions, because that's a life skill that he'll use forever. So I hope that was helpful. Scratch and Lift the Flap, Computers and Programming. So thanks so much. If you'd like to buy either of these books, you can do so at my Usborne shop, Suzanne shares usbornebooks.com. Thanks so much. Let me know if I can serve you in any way, and I'll be glad to. Thanks.